All right, so let's focus on this one. We know that the vertical asymptote is at x equals 1. I'm going to look over here and I'm going to compare the same thing. If I add 2 and divide by 2, the vertical asymptote here is also x equals 1. The horizontal asymptote, remember, if there isn't an x in the numerator, it's what's being added. But there's nothing being added, so it's y equals 0. Okay? But in this case, to get the horizontal asymptote, you need to do something different. Because there's an x on top and an x on bottom, you compare the degrees. Since the degrees are exactly the same, you take the leading coefficient with an imaginary 1, and that means that it's going to be y equals 1/2. Okay? So we talked about, let's see, they have the same horizontal asymptote. No, they don't. They have the same vertical asymptote. Yes, they do. They have the same end behavior. If you graph it, you can find out, and you can graph that on your calculator. I don't know the answer to that. You'll just have to look and see if the end behavior is exactly the same. And then they have the same y-intercept. So to figure out the y-intercept, I need to plug in 0 for this one and 0 for this one. So I'm going to take the 0 and I'm going to plug it in. 7 over 0 minus 1. 7 over negative 1 is negative 7. So that's the y-intercept for that one. If I plug that in, I'm going to go 0 minus 7 over 2 times 0 minus 2, which is negative 7 over negative 2, which is positive 7/2. So they don't have the same y-intercept. Okay? I need you to be aware, this is what I'm looking for when it's a multiple choice answer. Okay? The next one, what values make this undefined? So you set it equal to 0 and you factor. X equals 9. And x equals negative 1. Now you just have to be careful by looking at the numerator and make sure that the top and the bottom aren't the same. Now I need to show you that if this was like 2, let's say x plus 9, and then, x minus 9, and then x minus 9, x plus 1, this would be considered a hole. That would be the only vertical asymptote. So be aware, if there's a hole, that is not an asymptote. This is a hole. This is an asymptote. Okay? All right, let's look at this one. For what values make it undefined? There are no values, so all numbers are defined for this expression. Okay? So given the parent function, describe. Okay? Of course, you have to write down horizontal. Translation, 6 units right. And the 8 is a straight shooter. Vertical translation, 8 units up. Now, if you want to, you can graph it in your calculator and double, triple check. Okay? This one's a workout. So, you can either approach the first part first or the second part first. I'll approach the first part first. So I'm going to take the 8 and put it over 1. I'm going to change the sign of everything to the right. Okay? Remember, I need to make the bottoms the same. So, oops, I didn't do that. So this has a 1. I mean, it's the same thing. So give this an x plus 1. Remember, you're multiplying. So you're not giving it an x. You're multiplying. Distribute, distribute. I get 8x plus 8, then minus 3 over x plus 1, which gives me 8x plus 5 over x plus 1. This, what I just figured out here, simplified to that right there. Now, I kept it in parentheses because I'm going to be multiplying by whatever I simplify that by. So I'm going to factor. Factor the top. Factor the bottom. They both have a negative, and they both are divisible by 3. Okay. If you look, I can't simplify anything, so I'm just going to rewrite it. I'm going to rewrite it as 8x plus 5 because it means the same thing. Now, if you remember, whenever you multiply, you factor, 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 which is what was done, and then you cross things off. Top, bottom, bye-bye. Top, bottom, bye-bye. All that's left is x minus 6 over negative 3, but you know you can't have a negative in the denominator, which means negative x plus 6, or 6 minus x over 3. It's the same thing but backwards. Let's see which one. Boom, the answer's B. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, you could take the original question and set it equal to this answer, and if it says true, it would be A. But if you set it equal to this, it'll say false. If you set it equal to this, it'll say false. If you set it equal to this, it'll say false. If you set it equal to this, it'll say true. So you circle B, then you show me all this work to show me that you didn't just do what I just told you to do. So it says, which of the expressions below is defined for all values? So when they're asking for all values, they're asking for something that looks like this. So let's start. X plus 1, which means x can equal 0 and x can equal -1. So that one's out. X minus 4, x plus 4, so x can equal 4 and x can equal -4, so it has undefined values. I'm sorry, that one's out. Move this up. Now, I'm kind of messing with you a little bit because if you look here, you can't think of two numbers that multiply to get 12 and add to 9. So if you do the quadratic formula, which I'm going to write QF, you had to know it was more difficult than just the one above where you just, okay, minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. If you look here, let's see, I did that right. 9 squared is the square root of 81 minus 48. Okay. And so I get a positive value. So if it's a positive value, I don't know, what is it, 33. Okay. They will be decimals, but they're still values that won't work. Now, it is going to be something that goes forever and ever and ever, but it's still a possible value, so that one's out. The problem with this one is if I set this equal to 0, and I square root, I have a negative number, which means it's imaginary, which means all my restrictions that would be real are actually imaginary. So that means all values work. The answer is D. Okay, so real value, let's go through this and zoom out a little bit. 0 and -1, those don't work, or those are undefined, out. Undefined, out. Decimal, undefined, out. Imaginary, imaginary means it's not real. So that's like it's not even there. That means all values work. Okay? This one I want you to simplify or solve in two different ways. So one way would be give this a 3, give this a 3. Give this an x minus 1, give this an x minus 1. 3, bye-bye. X minus 1, bye-bye. Box this out. Distribute. And then solve. Plus 6 plus 6. We lower this here. X squared plus 5x equals 0. X equals 0. X equals -5. None of those make it undefined, so it works. That's one way. The other way is make an x, multiply what touches. X plus 6, x minus 1 equals -2 times 3. X squared plus 5x minus 6 equals -6. As soon as you get a step that is exactly the same as this one, you can just go, hey, this is the exact same thing, and I am done. So let me be clear. You're showing me two different ways. You're solving it one way and giving me the answer. Then when you do the other way, as long as you show me that gets to that step and it's equal, you're good to go.